Bonjour classe, bienvenue. On continue notre grammaire avec interrogative pronouns. Now, it's a pretty fancy term for some things we actually already know how to use, and we are going to take some principles that we know and apply them to asking questions. All right, now, the first thing we have to remember when we think about interrogative pronouns is what is a pronoun? And what does this word interrogative mean? Interrogative means that we are asking for information, we're asking questions. And what kind of information could we possibly be looking for? There's two main questions. We're either asking who or we're asking what. Those are the only two things we're going to be asking with these words. The other thing we need to remember is, what does a pronoun do? And a pronoun takes the place of a noun. Now, the kind of interrogative pronoun we need is going to depend on the role that the pronoun is playing in the sentence. For example, the noun could be a subject, the noun could be a direct object, or the noun could be a preposition. Or the noun could be working with a preposition, I should say. Prepositions are like to, at, on, with, about, and things like that. So what you have to remember is that we have already learn some of these words, and we're kind of going to be combining concepts that we already know. Alright, there are three main words that we're going to be working with, all of which we know, and they're all used in combination with each other. We have qui, we've got que, which sometimes will become QU apostrophe before a vowel, and we have s. S, really all that means, this guy right here is, there it is it. Now, hopefully these words kind of look familiar to you, and you can think of some question words we already know that use these three words. Alright, so there are three parts when we create an interrogative pronoun. Part one, what you have to ask yourself is, am I talking about, because remember, we replace nouns, okay, with a pronoun. So what am I replacing? Am I asking what? Am I asking who? If I am replacing a person, obviously I'm asking who. If I'm replacing a thing, I'll be asking what, and in that case, I will need que. So if I want to know who's talking, I would use qui. If I want to know who are you looking at, or if I want to know what are you talking about, that would be que. The middle part is always going to be s. Okay, unless we use inversion. Now, some of us really didn't care for inversion, some of us loved it. What you'll find is that if you don't want to use s, use inversion, alright? So maybe inversion will become your new best friend. Our third part, well, I guess it's the second part, but it's really the third part. What you have to understand is, what role is this object that we're replacing, this word we're replacing, what role does it play in the sentence? Is it the subject, or is it the direct object of the verb? Alright, if it's the subject, then you're going to add qui to the end of your interrogative pronoun. If it's the object, you guessed it, you're going to end with que. Alright, so it's going to make most sense when we see these things in action. So, here are some examples. What does it look like when who is my subject? Well, let's see. Here's an example of a sentence. Who is speaking? Alright, who is the subject? I want to know who it is that's talking. Alright, so because I want to say who, I start with qui. I put s next, and then I have to think, alright, is this person doing the talking or being talked about? The answer is, this person is doing the talking. So they're the subject of the sentence, so we need to end in qui, which gives us, this will make sense in a second. So give us this sentence: qui est-ce qui parle? Qui est-ce qui parle? Now, that kind of seems like really long, right? You can actually, qui est-ce qui can be shortened to just qui, and qui is much more common. I can just say qui parle. Now, you're probably like, I already know this, and that's my point. We've been asking questions since level 1, so we're not going crazy off grid, but we are going to see a little bit more complicated things that we're not quite used to. For example, What happens when who is my direct object? Let's check out a situation where that may occur. Whom do they believe? All right, yes, whom is the correct way to say in English. I want to say who. That's my first part. Because I want to say who, I always start with qui. Put my S in the middle. But now, here's the question. Is the who, are they the direct object? Are they the subject? If they're the subject, they're doing the believing, but that's not the case. They are the ones believing. The question is, who do they believe? Right? So that makes whom the direct object, which means we have to end the interrogative pronoun in que. So the question becomes qui est-ce qu'il croit? I had to do a QU apostrophe here because the next word started with a vowel. So, what I want you to think back to is, do you remember our relative pronouns? Qui plus verb, que plus subject. I want you to check it out. This follows those same rules. Look here. Qui plus verb, que plus subject. And if I went all the way back to the other slide, look, qui plus verb. So once again, we're combining things that we already know. All right. Now, say I want to use inversion. I want to say who, I want to invert my sentence. All right. I've got the sentence I just had. Who do they believe? All right. So remember, we don't have S in inversion. So we would take that out first. We have to flip our subject and our verb, switch the spots. And all we need to use is qui when we invert. So it becomes qui croit-il, which some people prefer to using S. Est-ce que. So it's kind of up to you what you would like to use. All right, 2 more examples. What happens when what is the subject of my sentence? So an example would be, what's happening? It's a very popular sentence. And you guys are going to see a lot on tests and quizzes, so it's important to look out for it. Now I want to say what, so I have to start with que, or in our case it's going to be QU apostrophe. I put in my S. Now the question is what the subject, or is it the verb? And it's what's happening, so it's the subject of my sentence. So I have to end it in qui. My sentence becomes qu'est-ce qui se passe. This verb se passer means to happen. So this is something you're not used to. You're used to what being qu'est-ce que. But in this case, it's qu'est-ce qui because it is the subject of the sentence. And I'm still following my rule, qui plus verb. All right, so that's an example of what as the subject of a sentence. All right, what about when what is the object? And I think you're going to find this to be pretty familiar, but let's walk through the steps. So for example, what are you doing? Not that madame ever asked anybody that. So I want to say what, so I start with que, or in my case QU apostrophe, because S starts with a vowel, and that's my next part. All right, now the question is what the subject of the sentence, or is it the object? Well, if you look here, we've got you doing. We already have a subject. This is the object of the verb doing because it's what is being done. So we need to end our sentence with que. So our sentence becomes qu'est-ce que tu fais? Now hopefully qu'est-ce que looks really familiar to you because it means what, and that's what you've been learning since you were in level 1. You just never really understood why it was put together this way. And again, it's still following our rule, que plus subject. All right, last thing I want to take a look at is inversion with what. That's actually not the last thing. We're doing prepositions too. But anyway, so what if I don't want to say qu'est-ce que and I want to invert? All right, remember, there's no S. We got to switch the subject and the verb. When I invert, I use just que. So it would look like this. Que fais-tu? And that's a shortened version. Some people like it. Some people want the shortened version. You're welcome to use either. Alright, so here's the last thing is that, well, object of a preposition. And you're like, well, what the heck's a preposition? Here are some examples en français. This is not an exhaustive list, but some popular ones. A for to or at, de for about, avec, with, pour, for. There's a whole bunch more, but these are some popular ones we'll see with our question words. If you have a preposition, you're going to use qui if you want to say who, and you're going to use quoi if you want to say what. So don't forget est que if you're not going to use inversion. So here's an example. De qui est-ce que tu parles? So this means about whom is it that you are talking? Or you could say de qui parles-tu? So this is the inverted version down here. I don't have my est que in it, and then this is my regular version up top. All right, an example of object of a preposition meaning what would be de quoi est-ce que tu parles? About what are you talking? Or, what are you talking about essentially? De quoi parles-tu? That's your inverted form. Okay, if you wanted to kind of sum it up in a chart, and there is a chart on your notes, the chart would look like this. So it's just a kind of a different way to think about it. And take a look. So here's how the chart works. If I am talking about people, then if it's a subject, I use qui or qui est-ce qui. If it's a direct object, I use qui or qui est-ce que. If I'm talking about things, but it's the subject of the sentence, qu'est-ce qui. Talking about things and it's a direct object, I use qu'est-ce que. Here are my objects of the preposition. So here's your job. All right, traduisez les questions. I want you to pick deux and try and translate them en français and go through the process of trying to figure out, all right, what am I trying to say? Do I want to say who or what? And then figure out, okay, is it the subject of the sentence? Is it the direct object? Is it the object of a preposition? And then come with those to class and we will try and figure them all out together. Au revoir mes amis, merci beaucoup.